morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Some big stories today. When it rains, it pours. Our first one, a number of you pointed out to me, is a story that developed over the weekend, I guess, but particularly got a lot of attention yesterday. It started to get some momentum, and that's the headline, which still isn't much of a headline to my surprise, that Andy Serkis is doing a small role in the Avengers. I am just so happy for Andy Serkis, and I guess the headline means a little bit more after the way Dawn of the Planet of the Apes not only performed at the box office, but the way it impressed audiences. I think hearing that Andy Serkis is going to be in another film in a motion capture capacity means a lot more Monday morning than it did the Thursday before Dawn of the Planet of the Apes came out. I mean, we all knew he was good, but we didn't know he was that good. And then also the technology had gotten to a point where they could assist him so completely. I know a number of you are saying, don't forget the animators, Grace. You know, the animators put in all that facial movement and made it work on an ape's face. But, you know, Andy Serkis, though, is still really pushing hard to show that the final performance that shows up on camera is his. It's the actors. And I think maybe there's a little bit of a fight brewing down the line between actors and animators. We'll see. But he very much took that stance when talking about his work on the Avengers. Not just that he's playing a small role. The rumor has been that he will do the motion capture for Thanos. I think that would be untenable. I don't think he's going to do any motion capture for an actor, for a character that already has a very well-established voice actor, like James Spader for Ultron or Josh Brolin for Thanos. Those actors are going to want to deliver their own performances. But I'm sure Andy Serkis will be helping them as he's been helping Mark Ruffalo. And the way he talked about the work he was doing there, I thought was fascinating. And also that Andy Serkis has managed to make an entire career, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. I guess he's always a little bit behind the camera, right? Because his final performance is to some degree animated. But that he's been able to take this ball and run with it. And it's a great skill in life to be able to take the smallest thing and blow it up into something big. Because sometimes all you get is a small opportunity and you have to make the most of it. And Serkis has certainly done that. But he was brought on board to not only do this small performance, I guess Joss Whedon said, as long as Andy Serkis is on my set, I should utilize him. And I wonder if we'll be able to tell. This will be, some people are saying, you have to see Serkis's performances beside other actors to really know how special his work is and what the medium itself, motion capture, is capable of. So that'll be interesting to see if that is indeed the case when we see him in a big film. I mean, I think we've already seen it with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Toby Kebbell really gave Serkis a bit of a run for his money. His Koba is extremely well realized, and I think should be getting a little bit more attention than he is. But then I guess he hasn't done the legwork that Serkis has, and I also think Toby Kebbell obviously isn't staying in this medium. He's graduating to being on screen in the flesh for the Fantastic Four reboot as Dr. Doom, whereas to Andy Serkis, this is his bread and butter. I think he's tried to have a flesh and blood career on camera, and it just hasn't worked out, and I think he realizes that, and he's doubling down in motion capture. So he has the small role in the Avengers, but what I love most about the coverage is what he's done for Mark Ruffalo. What a gift. Basically, he talked to Joss Whedon and the crew, and he said, you can't just treat, Mark Ruffalo as someone who's going to be replaced. He's just a stand-in. He's not. He's the actor. He is delivering a performance here, and just because he's not in full costume like his co-stars, he should be treated with the same respect and reverence as everyone else, with the same awe. But they weren't just asking people to imagine that, they helped them imagine it. For instance, Serkis said he put weights on Mark Ruffalo's arms so that Ruffalo could really not only better deliver that kind of physical performance, but he would himself understand what it felt to have the Hulk's arms, to have these big, as Serkis put it, wrecking balls on each fist. And also it affects his gait, his stand. And I think that's fascinating. It's fascinating that only Serkis thinks of these things. What the hell, Whedon? What about and also your costume department? What about the people who did the special effects and the motion capture for the first film, the first Avengers, which, by the way, looked very good. But why weren't they thinking of this? Mark Ruffalo's like, where have you been all my life, Andy Serkis? I'm quite excited to see what this means for Mark Ruffalo's performance, because he did a heck of a job on the first one, as I just said, and as we've all been saying. That's why everybody is so campaigning for a Hulk standalone film, because the talent is finally there. And the talent was there with Edward Norton, of course, but I think things are finally coming together perfectly. It's the perfect storm. So I thought that was really interesting. Also, the other thing that he did I thought was great was Serkis created a sound system where he said that Mark Ruffalo could deliver the Hulk roar, the Hulk voice. It wasn't like, oh, okay, well, just try and imagine later on this is what the Hulk's going to sound like. You heard it when he was delivering his performance. And Mark Ruffalo could hear it. He could feel that he had that power, that he could, affect people in that way, and catch them off guard. Instead of them having to be like, okay, at this point the Hulk roars, everybody acts scared. And Mark Ruffalo just stands there being like, yeah, hey, I'm playing the Hulk. And I just thought that was great. And so I think Andy Serkis is not only, this is wonderful for him, but as special effects continue, and I think we're going to be seeing more and more motion capture performances, that he is helping others. It's a generous thing to do, but at the same time, I think it's really helping Serkis' bottom line, obviously. And I'm very excited to see what he does with the Jungle Book. When you hear sophisticated discussions like this, if I was Jon Favreau, who, by the way, just cast his Mowgli yesterday, I'm not sure where the little boy is from, but he is of the correct ethnicity, and so I think that's great. But I think that if I were Jon Favreau, I'd be like, I don't know if I'm as sophisticated as Andy Serkis. And so I think probably you're going to have a humorous Jungle Book coming from Disney, because I think that's Jon Favreau's strong point. And I think Warner Brothers is going to deliver an epic, breathtaking Jungle Book with Andy Serkis. And audiences will have to decide which one they prefer. That's quite the interesting matchup. And I'm curious which way you think you would lean. All right, so that's the first story of the day. Also, speculate away as to who Andy Serkis could be playing. There's so many people he could be playing. He could be playing one of Thanos's, lackeys. I mean, there could be a new character. There's just an infinite number of people that he could be playing. So I'm going to be more excited just to see the performance, I think, because there's just no hint. You're just picking out of the Marvel grab bag. So I guess you could give a wish list. All right, so the second story of the day, I had a tough time choosing the second story of the day. I guess I'll go into the other Marvel story because it's a better transition. But the third story of the day is some of my favorite kind of Hollywood gossip. But anyway, this goes with I'm skipping to the story already. I'd originally wanted to put it first, but let's go to the Marvel one. And that is this female Thor that was announced yesterday on The View. And this has really struck people in a number of different ways. So I'm going to approach each of them. And the reason I'm discussing it here is because every time a comic book company does something these days, you have to wonder, do they know something that I don't about the movies down the line? For instance, what's going on in Thor 3? You would think that bringing Angela in from Guardians of the Galaxy, although she's not in the movie, but making her Thor's and Loki's long-lost sister would be enough, and maybe that's what the movies would be building towards. But apparently no. For some reason, Marvel has decided to have a female Thor. Maybe they have a little bit of a stretch of time until the movies. Maybe this is something that Marvel Comics just wanted to do, and now they have a little bit of a breather between the next Avengers movie and now. So that's not until 2015 in the summer. So they can have this little Thor, gender change jaunt, and it doesn't affect the comics. Because, I don't know, although you have to wonder, does Marvel think people only read these comics periodically when the movies come out and then they go away? That doesn't speak very well for Marvel's ability to hold on to their comic book audience, right? So anyway, it was announced on The View, one of the other things people took issue with, that Thor is going to be female. Is Thor turning into a female like Loki did so famously a couple of years ago? No, Thor is just going to lose the right to wield Mjolnir. For instance, they made a big deal saying the inscription says this hammer can be wielded by whoever is worthy. Well, Thor is no longer worthy, and some woman comes along and she happens to be worthy, which I can totally understand. That's an interesting way to go. It's a great thing to kind of exploit the loophole on this saying on Mjolnir. But my question is, why does she then get the name Thor? It's not. I don't think that the Mjolnir goes hand in hand with the name, right? I'm guessing. And also, why does she have to rip off Thor's style? If I was Thor, I'd be like, you're single white femaling me, lady. Like, why can't she just have a different look and be a character in her own right? I think that would be much more interesting. But anyway, they're saying this isn't female Thor, or Thorette as they were calling her on The View. This is a female Thor. She is the Thor of the Marvel Universe. She will step into his Avengers role. How is that possible? I'd be like, you need to audition again. I'm sorry, we don't know you. We don't know how good you are with Mjolnir. I think Thor's been training with that thing, or at least has some experience. Time does equal experience. I know some people don't like to hear that. Everyone likes to think they would be a progeny right away, but that's not the case. You actually do benefit from the passage of time and experience. Maybe on top of your innate abilities, but time and experience does make a difference in any field. And so that's always, I think, something that I marvel at, because I think, when you start out in any field, you rally against it so hard. So come to the realization that it's true is always an interesting place to be. But anyway, so that's what's happening. They want you to think of this Thor as the Thor. Now, some people, and I agree, why can't Marvel... Marvel, by the way, has wonderful female characters, but they actually mostly happen to be X-Men. And since that's not something they have the film rights to anymore, I think Marvel is trying to build up their other characters. Although I much would have preferred they go on The View and announce a good Black Widow title, standalone title. Or perhaps something with Captain Marvel, some character that was going to be playing into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This seems kind of like a shot in the dark. I really don't see female viewers, or female viewers becoming, I guess, female readers for Marvel Comics, especially on this kind of property. Although I will say the talent here, if anyone can pull this off, I think these guys have a great shot. I've really been enjoying Jason Aaron's work on Thor right now. I think he's a very talented writer. Also, by the way, if you haven't read his standalone independent comic, Southern Bastards, I believe it's an Image comic, I'm not sure, but it's very, very good. It's like a little, you can tell it's a cable show pitch, but I'm still enjoying it quite a bit. And I think quite refreshingly, they have like Southern recipes in there and everything. It's like, it's a love-hate comic to the South. And so it's a great piece of work. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that the artist on the book, Russell Dauterman, was actually my artist on Superbia. And I think he's a phenomenal artist. He did such a good job. I loved working with him. Those of you who've read Superbia, and if you have, thank you, are familiar with his work. And I think you know, if you have read Superbia, what a great job he does with female characters and giving them personality, but also male characters. He's a really good storyteller. A lot of times people just draw pretty pictures, but I think Russell has a very cinematic feel to him, and I was very pleased with what he was able to do with sequences that I wrote. He was able to kind of be a fantastic cinematographer and make really great choices in terms of not just the way he depicted the characters, but the camera angles, in terms of camera angles, you know, being panels. So I think this is a perfect book for him. I think he's really well matched with the material. So I'm excited to see what they do with it. I don't know if it's going to work, but as I said, they have a great shot at success because of their talent. So the question is, do you have to just, for strong female characters, do you just change Thor's, DNA, his chromosomes? And I would say, that's always tough. I would always prefer strong female characters in their own right, but look how successful Miles Morales was. But that was in a different universe where Peter Parker was killed off. They made the switch. I think we all know it's only a matter of time before Thor is, male Thor, I guess. It's so condescending to Thor to have to be, you thought like when you were in school and you had to be differentiated from other kids, distinguished by having just your letters like David B and David G, to tell them apart. But like male Thor and female Thor, I mean, like they might say it's not Lady Thor, but that's what everyone's going to refer to it. But we all know it's only a matter of time because Chris Hemsworth is under contract that Thor will wield Mjolnir or once again, or this lady will have to yield to him, whatever. So I think that it's a gimmick, but we'll see if it actually has some staying power at all. But the other thing I think people talked about is why are you debuting this news on The View? It's kind of a slap in the face to comic book fans. And I think, well, it's nice on the one hand to see Marvel and Disney, the parent company, because of course The View is on ABC, which is Disney's network channel, so they can set up this kind of publicity opportunity very easily. But I think it's great that they're finally, I've talked about this before, why isn't Disney using the full weight of their empire to get more people to read comics? But I think they've just picked the wrong material. I think they would have been better off announcing some kind of new, more female-friendly title. I still think that people have, and you shouldn't, by the way, I say this all the time, if you want to read comics, just jump in. But still, all the backstory in the comic book universe tends to be quite the deterrent to new readers. It shouldn't be. You can go on Wikipedia, you can watch, when I was doing Think About the Ink episodes, but I'm sure there are other resources to get, to be filled in. I mean, it's like you just have to jump in. And you can go back and read some older comics, but don't worry about it. You'll be caught up enough. But I just think that the View readers, this was just the wrong piece. And I also think I was a little disappointed in the way some of the, I think that even though the suits at Disney thought this was a great idea for cross-promotion, I think clearly, based on some of the comments the hosts at The View were making, that they didn't think very highly of this and, didn't think much of having to introduce this segment and hold this interview. So I'm curious to what you guys think. Do you agree it was a slap in the face? What do you think of a female Thor? What do you think this means for the movies? Do you think they're just playing for the sense of play? And do you have any faith in the creative team? All right, so let's move on to the third story. This is a good one. Late last night, it was announced that Seth MacFarlane is being sued for ripping off another idea for Ted, that he stole that idea. And this lawsuit seems to have a little bit of merit. Now, for a long time, people have been saying, what about Greg the Bunny? Didn't Seth MacFarlane rip off Greg the Bunny with Ted? And I think you have to remember that Greg the Bunny was a little bit more of a successful property than the one that is suing Seth MacFarlane. So I think those people involved there creatively have more to lose. They're already in the Hollywood machine. Why make an enemy, especially with someone as powerful as Seth MacFarlane? Also, Greg the Bunny starred one Seth Green, who of course voices Chris Griffin on Family Guy. So I'm sure that he was able to facilitate introductions for everybody who was on the creative side of Greg the Bunny, and perhaps give them a great connection in Seth MacFarlane. And so in that environment, people just don't sue. But I think that clearly the people, this is called Charlie the Abusive Teddy, these people are very frustrated to see not only Ted, but now Ted 2 is being made. so much money. The first 10 made over 500 million worldwide, and I think these people are like, we're never going to get into Hollywood, we should get paid. And their suit, as I said, seems to have some merit. I've included in the video description a link to the article detailing some of the evidence that it's been put forward so you can judge for yourself, but I think it looks pretty damning. Basically, Charlie the Abusive Teddy in 2009, where they aired videos on YouTube, and then this is the kicker, Funny or Die. And I think that by being on Funny or Die, that is very likely that Seth MacFarlane and company saw these videos. That's a very industry-friendly site, and I think it's perfectly within reason that they would have witnessed these videos and said, why don't we do that? So I think, and also, but one of the really things that's detailed in this article is the Twitter feed. And I think it's just so bad to see how similar these are. And I don't understand, it's one thing to rip off someone's creative idea, but to do it almost word for word is just really insulting. It's really a slap in the face. I mean, as Shakespeare said, there's nothing new under the sun. And of course, Shakespeare himself has been accused of stealing other people's ideas. But, there's supposed to be some variety. I mean, if you can't even add to an idea, that's just very insulting. And I think this is just another blow to Seth MacFarlane, who was doing so well, but now after, of course, A Million Ways to Die in the West totally fizzled at the box office and was really, I think, a black eye for him personally because he made himself the star of the film. And also, I think the biggest problem is that people said it just wasn't funny. And that's just like one of the worst things you could ever imagine being said about your work if you're a comedian, especially because I think he hoped very much to make the new Blazing Saddles. And now to be slapped with this lawsuit, who knows if it'll impede Ted 2 going forward at all, because there could be a reward here. This happens all the time. I've detailed before that, the writer of E.T., another person sued Steven Spielberg for ripping her off, and she had his notes on her script. And, you have to be very careful in Hollywood. I mean, this happens occasionally. You have to, sometimes you have to accept it, especially if you're, you want to stay a member of the community. But I think we're starting to see more and more, and I think it's because YouTube is so separated from Hollywood and has, there's so little respect from online content from Hollywood, and they feel that, we'll never cross, our paths will never meet. The internet's a bad neighborhood, and I'm in, the gated community of Hollywood. But I think that we're starting to see more and more of a crossover, and I think, quite horribly, and they should be punished. This more established talent is being called on, ripping off properties they felt, no one will ever see Charlie the Abusive Teddy, why don't I run with it? But the right thing to do is to offer Charlie the Abusive Teddy people a nice check for their work and to buy the rights to it. That's what you're supposed to do. And so that's what I would hope would happen, but of course, hoping and reality are always so different. All right, so those are the 3 stories of the day, and on to the viewer question. Happy birthday, Tom Penn. Tom Penn says today, July 16th, is his birthday, and it would make his day if I were to answer his question, because he says this is his favorite show on the whole of YouTube. That is quite the compliment. Thank you, Tom, and happy birthday. And Tom has a fun question I think we'd all enjoy, and also kind of ties into today's Marvel stories. And Tom says, anyway, here I go. I got into comic books because of you, and I mainly read Marvel. Me too these days. DC New 52, why? And so Tom says, so I wanted to know, with Marvel Studios, what superheroes would you want to, he would personally, I think autocorrect got the best of Tom. But Tom basically says, with Marvel Studios, the superheroes I would like to see, in the future going forward is Namor. That's his pick. Or some of you say Namor. I think it's Namor. This is a big thing with comic books. Everyone's just reading it, so it's hard to understand exactly how they're supposed to be pronounced because no one says the words. I think Namor sounds horrible, so I'm going to say Namor. It's like I always thought it was Wolverine's son Dakin, and it's actually Daken, which sounds really unmenacing. All right, so anyway, Tom says, who would you like to see? And then said, keep doing all of your shows, Grace, love them. 2 smiley faces, and then a smiley face with sunglasses. He just wrote the first two smiley faces, and then the smiley face with sunglasses. I don't know if it's supposed to be sunglasses, it's with the B, but I like it with sunglasses, so that's what I'm going to call it. So the reason I brought this up, Tom, not only because it was your birthday and because of Marvel, but because I think it speaks to the fact that Marvel has pretty clear marching orders at this point. I think fandom has been super clear about what we want to see next, and I think it's quite confounding that Marvel just doesn't give us this. I think we want to see a Hulk movie. I think that's been made pretty clear, although I think that's the most likely at this point. And then the other things that we want to see are clearly a Black Panther movie, or just Black Panther introduced in some capacity, even if he's just like, hello, like in the Avengers commissary, or on a television even, like the Stephen Strange shout out in Captain America the Winter Soldier. How about just a Wakanda reference? They might have had a Wakanda reference, but I didn't notice it. So we want Black Panther in there. I think Doctor Strange, Marvel is of course doing that. I think that's really in demand. I think that's a smart move. I hope it's really at the level of the other projects though. I'm getting nervous that Doctor Strange is going to be like Marvel's like B or C game and be a little too genre-y. We'll see. I don't have a lot of faith in Scott Derrickson as the choice. But as Marvel likes to say, Kevin Feige was recently just saying, don't worry about Peyton Reed. Remember Joe and Anthony Russo and your concerns about them with the Winter Soldier? Well, Peyton Reed's the same thing. And I would be like, Kevin Feige, you're really, playing chicken with that saying, because eventually it's not going to work. And people are going to be like, nope, Peyton Reed was exactly what I expected, not Edgar Wright. So we'll see. So Doctor Strange, though, I hope that turns out. And then also I want to see Captain Marvel, a.k.a. Carol Danvers, which is odd, because I don't like her in the comics. I think she's never been well done, and I think she doesn't have much of a personality. But I think she's a classic member of the team, and I think the movies might be a great opportunity to give her a personality. Joss Whedon is very good with female characters, as so many of you like to point out, and I agree. He's done wonderful work with Black Widow, although the qualities that he's given Black Widow have not transitioned into the comic books, which is disappointing. But I think that I'd like to see Carol Danvers be a female superhero who's not snarky. That's my dream for Carol Danvers. She's just a by-the-numbers Air Force soldier, kind of like Steve Rogers, but with a little more personality. But we'll see. I have high hopes for Evangeline Lilly as Janet Van Dyne, a.k.a. the Wasp. I think she might do a really phenomenal job, and I think she's very well cast, and a very unassuming actress. So I can only hope. My choice, of course, for Captain Marvel has been Elizabeth Banks, but we'll see. But those are the people I want to see, and it's the people everybody wants to see. So what the heck, Marvel? Everybody's on the same page. You should come over here too. So I'm curious what you think. Tom, do you agree with me? Namor, by the way, I'm not sure where he falls. He might be a Fantastic Four character because he has such a strong history with them. So that's a good question. Can Marvel Studios even use Namor? So thank you, Tom. Happy birthday again. And everybody, please write down below what Marvel characters you'd like to see and what you think of today's top 3 stories. Thank you so much for tuning in. And please let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions that you might have.